how we need to address our bodies is different from how we have been addressing them. Our bodies are vastly intelligent. They're divine creations. And within each one of us is the knowledge of what we really truly need. And the body code is how we decipher those needs.
I'd like to welcome back to the show returning champion, Dr. Bradley Nelson. How you doing? How you doing, Bradley?
Great, Alex. It's great to be back. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you were the first person I had on talking about energy healing. And, the audience really loved it. You kind of introduced me to the whole concept of energy healing. And since then I've had others on the show and gone deeper into the world of energy healing. And then of course you have your new book out called The Body Code.
Right.
The sequel to the emotion code or emotional code or emotion.
It's the sequel.
Right. To the body. Yeah, exactly. The body
code. It's like
code.
this.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So my friend, first question, what the heck is the body code?
Well, let me go back a little ways. In 1980, I was going to school in Hawaii, and I took a class kind of on a whim on computer programming. And I was just immediately head over heels in love with computers and programming. And so I eventually taught myself how to do programming. And I eventually had a business in the early 80s called the Computer Tutor, where I would go into people's businesses and people would they'd buy a new IBM PC or an Apple II. They wouldn't know what to do with it because there was really very little software, almost none for people. And so I'd go in and I would program and set up some kind of a relational database for their business so that they could actually use their computer and get some work out of it. Mm-hmm. And that was really fun. I loved doing that. So then it was really an answer to prayer for me. At a certain point, I was brought back to this decision that I needed to make about what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And I prayed about what to do. And I actually got an answer, and the answer was directing me into the healing arts. So when I got out of chiropractic school and I started working on patients, I always had a computer there, right there with me as I would find imbalances on people, as I would find new imbalances over years of time. And I practiced for roughly a couple of decades. What I would do is I'd put those somewhere in this database that I was building. I was building this big mind map, this knowledge base of imbalances. And gradually I learned that the subconscious minds of my patients knew all the answers. My patients contained all the answers to their own problems within their own subconscious minds. And I knew how to ask the subconscious mind questions. And it was that computer programming career that really taught me about computers and getting answers. And what I came to realize is that the subconscious mind within each one of us is essentially a binary computer, which means that if you ask questions of the subconscious mind, it will give you answers, and those answers will come back. Usually, the easiest way to find those answers is through some kind of muscle strength test. So like, for example, if I were there with you, Alex, if you were to hold your arm straight out parallel to the floor, mm-hmm. If you were to say, my name is Alex, that's a true statement. If I were to press down on your arm at that point, you'd be strong. You'd be able to resist me. Right. If you were to say something that's untrue, like my name is Bob, your arm would go down. You wouldn't be able to resist me. Mm-hmm. And that's the binary computer within us that knows the difference between truth and falsehood and negative and positive and so on. And so what I found was that I could ask questions. And this is kind of a gradual thing, but as time went on, I found that the subconscious mind was very willing to give answers. And so during the last 10 years of my practice, I was really doing this in a big way, where I would just ask my patients' bodies, or ask their subconscious minds really what it was that they needed. And by then I had built up this database of all of these imbalances. And and I was able to, I mean, I had great success with it. Most of the people that I saw during the last 10 years I was in practice had been told there was really no hope for them at all, that Western medicine had nothing to offer. But you see, Western medicine is great at acute problems. Mm-hmm. So like, you know, if you don't, if you're racing the train, for example, and you lose and your leg now is over there, well, Western medicine might be able to reattach your leg. It's amazing what Western medicine can do, but most of the time, most of us don't need surgery. And most of the time, most of us don't need a drug. Instead, what we need is we need these imbalances corrected. And so what I found is that there are 6 different kinds of imbalances, and those are in the Body Code book. We talk about all of these, but here's a picture. And you see there are 6 icons here, and each one of these icons represents an area of imbalance. So there's 6 ways that we become imbalanced, 6 different categories. So think about, these will make sense to you, I think. The first one here is pathogens. I mean, we know that if you've got a virus in your body or some kind of a parasite or a fungal or bacterial infection, you need to get rid of that to be totally healthy, right? Mm-hmm. Makes sense. This one is energies. And that has to do with things like trapped emotions, which I think we talked about last time quite a bit. Mm-hmm. There are other things in this area too, the energy of traumas that you've been through and things like that. Over here, we have misalignments. Any tissue can misalign. And those misalignments are usually because of things in this category, like trapped emotions. We have a category here called circuits and systems. And this has to do with the connections between the spirit and the physical body, all of the organs, all of the glands, all of that. The chakras, the meridians, things like that. Down here, we have toxins. We know it's pretty obvious if you've got a lot of toxins in your body, you're not going to be feeling very good. Over here, we have nutrition and lifestyle. And that one's kind of obvious too. I mean, if you're deficient in a certain mineral, you're not going to be able to create certain chemical reactions in the body. You need your vitamins, et cetera. And so those are the 6 categories. And so you'll notice, by the way, in the book, I don't know if you can see it at this distance, but every single one of these has a page number. Mm-hmm. And so if you turn to that page, for example, for energies, you're taken here. And on the next page, what you'll see are some subcategories to this one. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so that's how the Body Code works. In other words, what I would do with my patients is I would literally ask their subconscious mind, is there a reason why you're having these symptoms? And maybe the symptom was fibromyalgia, or chronic fatigue, or some autoimmune problem, or maybe something worse. And the subconscious mind would answer back, and I would find one imbalance at a time and fix those imbalances. But it worked really, really well. Let me tell you a story. There was a fibromyalgia support group that I went to once. Mm-hmm. And I spoke for about an hour. It was at a hospital. And during the whole hour that I was speaking, there was a woman who was sitting just to my right, looking at me in the audience, and she was crying the whole time I spoke. She had tears kind of coming down. And when the meeting was over, people were gathered around trying to talk to me, and she was there trying to talk to me. And I was having a little bit of a hard time understanding her because she was kind of sobbing, but she told me that for 19 years, she had suffered so much with pain from fibromyalgia, which is, of course, pain in the muscles, with it has no known cause and no known cure. And she said she cried every day because the pain was so great, and all she had been able to do was take drugs. And all the doctors, she'd seen, I think, 9 doctors during all those years. They'd all told her, every one of them, the same thing. Nothing's ever going to help you. All you can do is take these drugs. And she said part of the reason she was crying that night was because it was the first time in all those years, almost 2 decades, that she'd ever heard a doctor say that there might actually be hope for her to get well, right? Wow. Well, she came into my office and started working on her. And what we found was that she was imbalanced in all of these 6 areas. So in other words, she had parasites. She had some viruses in the body. She had a lot of emotional baggage we had to clear out. In this category, pretty much every organ and gland in her body was imbalanced. We had to work on those. She had lots of misalignments. She was toxic. She had a lot of different nutritional deficiencies. And so The beauty of this work is that I was able to ask her subconscious mind what she really needed, and I was able to address those needs. And within 3 weeks, she was totally out of pain. And that might seem impossible, especially if you're someone who's been suffering with fibromyalgia. But I'm here to tell you that how we need to address our bodies is different from how we have been addressing them. Our bodies are vastly intelligent. They're divine creations. And within each one of us is the knowledge of what we really truly need. And the body code is how we decipher those needs. And that's why we call it the body code, because there's a little bit of deciphering involved, but it's actually really simple once you learn the process.
So basically that's a handbook of learning a language, a coding language, if you will, of the body. Very much like writing a program or an algorithm.
Yeah, in a way. I mean, sure. It's simpler than that, really, because sure. Basically the way that it works is, for example, if I were working on you, for example, mm-hmm. and let's say that you had some kind of an issue maybe going on, mm-hmm. what we would do is we would simply ask your subconscious mind, is there an underlying reason for this issue? Now, there might be several reasons for the issue, but the subconscious mind would give us one reason. It'll only give you one at a time. And so then we would ask, okay, where is this reason? Is it on the right side of the chart? Is it on the left side? Oh, okay, it's on the left side, using muscle testing. And then we'd ask, well, is it here, here, or here? And then maybe it would take us into toxins. And then we go there and we find out maybe that you never know. But let me tell you a story. Years ago, in 1988, when I was first in practice, I was working with another guy who was a mentor of mine. His name was Dr. Stan Flagg. This was in Kalispell, Montana. I'm from Montana. And I had just gotten out of school, and I'm following him around for about 4 months in his practice, taking notes. He was an older guy, been in practice for a long time. One day, a woman comes in, and she looks like death warmed over. She's in a wheelchair. Her whole family is with her. Mm-hmm. She's been to the hospital. She's been sick for about 3 weeks or so, and nobody knows what's wrong. She's got terrible fatigue, pain all throughout her whole entire body. And she told us that the only time she felt any better at all was when she was in a tub of very hot water, but then it took so much effort to get out of the water. She couldn't do it herself. So her family would have to help her, and it was just horrible. And they'd run all kinds of tests at the hospital and had no idea what was wrong. So I'm there taking notes for my mentor, Dr. Flagg, and intuitively, he asks her this question. He said, do you remember being bitten by a spider at some point? And she thought about it, and she said, well, yeah, actually, a couple of weeks before I started getting sick, I was bitten by a spider, and it swelled up pretty big, and then it went away. And so it's all energy, right? Venom is an energy. Our bodies, everything is energy. And so he treated that venom energetically to kind of counteract that. And so finished up her treatment. She went home with her family, and she rode out in the wheelchair. She was the last patient we saw that summer of 1988. And the last person we saw that Friday. Well, the next Monday morning, I came into the office, 8:00, and there's a patient sitting in the waiting room. And she looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. I walked over and I started talking with her. And all of a sudden, it dawns on me, this is the woman that was here Friday, the spider venom lady. And she was not in a wheelchair, and her family wasn't with her, and she was by herself, and she looked the absolute picture of health. And I was absolutely amazed. And she and I cried together. Wow. Because it was really so dramatic. So, I mean, Western medicine is great at lots of things, right? We have the best emergency care, acute care in the US of any country in the world. But most of the time, that's not really what we need. Most of the time, we don't need surgery or a drug. We need to figure out what the actual underlying reasons are, and for why we're not feeling well, or why we can't find love, or why we keep choosing the wrong kind of abusive person, or why we can't make money, or whatever it is. And those reasons are all contained in the body code. And that's the beautiful thing about it. It's easy. Anybody can do it. You don't have to pay someone to do it. Although we've certified thousands of people all over the world to do this work. You can find a practitioner at discoverhealing.com, but you can also do it yourself. And that's the reason why I wrote this book, was so that people could start to understand how their bodies actually work and how we can ask questions and get answers. And it's really a paradigm shift that is going to change the world, I believe, Alex.
Well, let me ask you this. You've mentioned this a few times in this conversation, that you ask the subconscious mind. How exactly do you ask the subconscious mind and get an answer back?
Well, what I used to do with my patients is I would simply talk to them and ask questions out loud. And then the answers from the subconscious mind would show up through a strong or weak muscle test. Because the subconscious, like I said, it's kind of a binary computer, and it'll give you answers as long as the answers are yes or no, because the subconscious mind has a way of giving you and demonstrating what the answers are, and that's through muscle strength. So you'll be strong for a yes answer and you'll be weaker for a no answer. And anybody can try this. Grab a friend and have them hold out their arm and have them say their name is their name. Like for me, I'd say, my name is Brad. If you were to push down on my outstretched arm, I'd be strong. If I told a lie, it would be weak, And so the subconscious mind can't really lie, and it contains all the answers. So that's the beauty of this.
Well, it's funny too, because I do occasionally this parlor trick, which is muscle testing for somebody who doesn't know, and I'll go and I'll grab a packet of Sweet and Low or Equal, and I'll have a packet of pure sugar. And I'll go, okay, guys, hold this to your hand, and I'll give them the sugar pack first, and I'll go, put your arm out. And with one finger, I'll just push down on the end of the arm, and it's like, oh, it's strong. Okay, great. Now put the pocket of Sweet and Low or Splenda onto your artificial sweetener onto your chest, and then put your arm out. And I put my same finger, and their arm goes weak, and they're just like, what the hell did you do? Right. I do it with alcohol too. I'll give them hold that bottle of tequila or that beer near your chest and watch how weak you get.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's an energetic thing. And I did it to a few doctors, and they're like, that is some BS. I don't know what you're doing. This is not, like, they couldn't comprehend the concept of muscle testing. And they were MD physicians in our family. And they were just like, that's some hocus pocus stuff. I'm like, maybe there's other things out there that you can't explain and that you learned in medical school.
Well, and that's part of the problem, really, is with Western medicine, is that the doctors are doing the best that they can with what they've learned, right? Yeah. And they learn from the doctors who taught them, who learned from the doctors who taught them, who learned from the doctors who taught them, and so these entrenched ideas can go back a long way, and but it's time for us to really start opening ourselves up to the reality of who we are and what these bodies of ours, what our bodies really are, and they're divine creations. And so, it's always been stunning to me. I'll tell you another story. There was a woman that came in to see me, and she'd had a chronic cough that had been going on for a year. I don't know if I told this story last time. I don't think I did.
I don't think you did.
No. Anyway, so she told me that her husband, months before, had moved into the other end of the house, because she said, I'm coughing all night long and I'm coughing all day long. And she said, I've been to the hospital. They've done MRIs, they've done CAT scans, they've done every test, and they're all negative. And so they just don't have any idea what's wrong with me. But she said, I'm afraid my marriage might end because of this, because it's just ruining my life. And so I got out the body code and I started asking questions of her subconscious mind about, is there a reason for this cough? And I was taken to this area here, toxins. And so in that area, I was taken into to another area. There's the toxins button. And by the way, you can use the book this way. You can actually use the book and find imbalances. And I was taken into an area that had to do with chemical toxins. So in other words, her subconscious mind was telling me there's some kind of a chemical that I'm being exposed to, or that I was exposed to. And that's part of this cough issue. And so I Googled a list of common household chemicals. And then I just started testing things, one by one. And all of a sudden I got a strong muscle test from her subconscious mind on something called camphophenique. So I looked at her and I said, do you use camphophenique? She said, camphophenique? And she turned pale. And I said, yeah, camphophenique. Do you use that? She said, well, yes. She said, every night I go over and I visit an elderly woman who's been a friend of our family for a long time. And she loves me to rub her feet with camphophenique every night. It's the last thing I do every day. And I said, well, I think that's your problem. Your body does not like it. In fact, that stuff, I don't even know if that's still available. It's probably been banned or something. It's very,
mm-hmm.
very toxic.
It's like drinking asbestos.
Kind of, yeah, yeah. Right. And so anyway, that was it. I treated the energy of that toxin that was in her body energetically, and she stopped using the camphophenique, and that was it. No more coughing at all. She didn't cough again from that moment. And so, you think about it, she'd been going the medical route for a year, and because they couldn't fix it with a drug or surgery, they couldn't really figure it out. Nothing was obvious. All of her tests were negative. That's not unusual. I had another woman that came in to see me once. She was a young woman, early 20s, and she'd been hospitalized for 5 days with this terrible pain in her abdomen. And they'd run every test that they could. All the tests were negative. And so they finally released her from the hospital. I said, we can't find anything. So you have to go now. And so she came in to see me. She's about a 9 on the 0 to 10 scale of pain, 0 being no pain and 10 being, go back to the emergency room. And so I started testing her using the body code, asking questions. Is there an underlying reason for this pain? And I found a couple of trapped emotions in this area and cleared a couple of things. And one of the areas I was taken to was down here to toxins, to nutrition and lifestyle over here. And there's a chart, not only in the book, but also in the app. Let me see if I can find this. It's a chart of nutrients, right? Mm-hmm. So I was taken to this chart. And so I asked, all right, you have a nutrient that you need on this chart? Yes. Is it in column A? Yes. Is it in one of the odd rows? No. So is it in row 2? Yes. And is it, carotenoids or chloride, cholesterol, choline? Oh, it's chromium. So it showed up that she needed chromium. And we used to carry chromium, and I knew that it was something that's good for blood sugar and so on. And I said, well, we're out of it right now. We usually carry it, but I said, I think you're going to need to get some at some point. Your subconscious mind is telling us that that's something you need, apparently. I didn't think anything else about it. Couldn't find anything else to work on, so I sent her home. Well, the next day she came back in. She was my very first patient the next day, and now she's at about a 10.5. She's getting worse. And I was really worried because, she was in so much pain. And I remember thinking, I can't believe that they missed what's going on with her in the hospital, because she's obviously got something really major going on. So I didn't know what else to do. So I broke out the body code and I started asking questions again. Is there an underlying reason for all this pain that you're having? And yes. Well, okay. Is it on the left side? No. It was on the right side. It was back in nutrition and lifestyle, same area. And out of all the thousands of possibilities, Alex, that I could have been taken to, I was taken right back to that chart of nutrients. And I was taken right to chromium again. And it was only at that moment that I remembered, oh yeah, that showed up yesterday. And I said, you know what? I don't know why. I have no idea why, but I said, your subconscious mind is telling me you really need chromium. I don't know why, but look, I want you to leave my office right now. go down the street to the health food store, buy some chromium tablets, and don't wait. Ask them for water and take some right there, and then come back. 20 minutes later, this young, very athletic woman is literally jumping up and down in my waiting room because she was so excited, because she said the instant that she took that pain, or that the chromium tablets, the pain was instantly gone. Just instantly. Boom. And so she's jumping up and down in my waiting room saying, I'm fixed. I'm fixed. She said, how did you do that? And I said, I have no idea. I still to this day have no idea. But I said to her, you know, the point of this is that your subconscious mind knew that that's what you needed. Why you needed it, I don't know. No one's ever been able to explain to me why she needed chromium and why it made her pain go away. I've never seen anything like that since with chromium. But the point is, her subconscious mind knew that's what she needed. And because we were using the body code, we were able to ask the questions and get the answer. And so that's the beauty of the body code, is that you can find answers to things that otherwise you might not ever be able to find answers to.
Well, we keep talking about the subconscious mind, and you kind of mentioned that it's binary, but is there a deeper explanation on why it knows things like this?
Well, I'll tell you something. I believe that, of course, we have two brains, right? You can think of it that way. We have two minds. We have our conscious mind, which is where we spend all of our waking hours, where we have our relationships, and we work our jobs, and we take our classes, we take our tests, and that's where we live. When we go to sleep at night, the conscious mind shuts down, and what's left is the subconscious. Now, it's always running. The subconscious mind is that incredibly intelligent part of our being that is able to take breakfast and turn it into new cardiac muscle cells, or turn it into millions and millions of new blood cells every minute, and so on. That subconscious mind of ours, I believe, remembers everything you've ever done, every moment of your life, every face you've ever seen in a crowd, everything you've ever eaten or tasted or touched or smelled is all in there in that subconscious mind. And so there's also a list in the subconscious, I believe, of the things that need to be done, the imbalances that a person has that need to be addressed in order for that person to be totally healthy. And during the last 10 years of my practice, I proved this over and over and over again, because most of the patients that I saw had been told there was no cure for them at all in Western medicine. And yet the vast majority of them were able to get well, with just a couple of exceptions, because I was asking the subconscious mind. I remember once I had a new patient that came in to see me, and I don't remember what was going on with her, but it was something that was significant. And I said to her, look, I said, I have no idea what's going on with you, what the reasons are. And she kind of looked at me in shock, and I said, but it's okay. Your subconscious mind, that mind within you, it knows exactly what's wrong with you, and it knows exactly what the reasons are. And I know how to talk to it, and so we can figure out what the reasons are. So don't worry. And she got well. So, in Western medicine, when they say that something is incurable, it means that it can't be cured with drugs or surgery. And that's a pretty limited way to look at things, really. Yeah. And so now we're stepping into this new age, really, this new reality, where we're realizing that it's really all about quantum physics, that our bodies are these exquisite creations that are vastly intelligent in and of themselves. And they know the answers. They know what they need. And it's just the most amazing thing. Sometimes we experience this a little bit ourselves. Sometimes, you might be at the health food store or something, and you might realize you need a certain vitamin or something because you've you've kind of been thinking about it, or you had a dream about it, or it's been popping into your head or something. The subconscious has these ways of communicating to our conscious minds, but most of the time it's not very efficient. And most of us are not very attuned to our subconscious minds because we're so distracted with, messages and Facebook and Instagram and this and that and TV and you name it. We're just not really in very close touch. But the body code gives us a way, it gives anyone really a way to tap in and find those underlying imbalances. And and it works.
Well, so it's more of a deeper intelligence of your body. It's connecting to a deeper database, if you will.
Well, yes, exactly right. And that's what the subconscious is this vast database. But it goes beyond that. I mean, it's there are mystical connections between the subconscious mind of each individual and the database of energy that fills the universe. Rupert Sheldrake, famous scientist from the UK, calls it the morphic field. It's been called the database of genius. It's been called the light of Christ. It's been called all kinds of things, depending on who you talk to. Rupert Sheldrake, I love some of his stories. He actually wrote a book about this, where what they did, they wanted to know, they wanted to do a study on dogs, because dogs will often know, they'll have an uncanny sense of when their owner is coming home. Mm-hmm. And so some people said, well, the dog can hear the owner's car coming down the street and they can tell that it's that car because it has a unique sound. Or they would say, well, it's a certain time of the day and the dog knows what time of day it is somehow. But what they did is they actually tested this. And what they found was that these dogs would suddenly get up and go to the door or go to the window to wait for the owner when the owner first began thinking about going home from work. Now, how is this possible? Well, you see, Rupert Sheldrake would call it the morphic field, this field of energy that is between all of us and between everything and within us as well. And the subconscious mind of every person is connected into that database, that morphic field. And so this is how our practitioners, for example, are able to work with other people that are at vast distances and yet get immediate results with them. And it can be really powerful. I remember when the emotion code first came out, which was actually in 2007. I think it was in 2007 or 8. I was on a radio show, and it was Dr. Richard DeCenso's program in Virginia. There was a woman who called in, and she said that she had this problem. And the problem was that she had this hernia where she was getting acid reflux coming up into her throat all the time, and it was just miserable. And could I help it? And I said, I don't know. So I tuned into her, and using the emotion code, I immediately found that she had a trapped emotion or some emotional energy. Now she was I think she was 54 at the time. And I tested that this was from age 35, this resentment emotion. And immediately she said, oh yeah, she said, I know exactly what that is. And so anyway, I released it at a distance. We were probably about, I don't even know, a couple thousand miles apart. And, but I released it energetically. And she felt a little better, and that was the end of it. I continued with the program. Well, the next day, she didn't tell me this, but she was scheduled to have surgery on this hernia. We call it a hiatal hernia, where the stomach protrudes up through the diaphragm a little bit. And so the sphincter at the top of the stomach quits working right. And anyway, so she was going to have surgery where they pull your stomach down and then staple you and so on. I had an aunt that died on the operating table having this done, actually. And so the next morning, she goes in to have the surgery. Well, they have her do a barium swallow, and then they do an X-ray. They call it a scout film, where they take a look just to make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be. or where they thought it was. And the doctor studied the x-rays for a while, and then he came back out and he said, I can't explain this to you, but it's not there anymore. He said, there's no sign of any abnormalities at all. So we can't see any fissures or pitting or anything like that. He said, we're canceling the surgery because you don't need it. And so she sends me this email. It's got like 150 exclamation points in it, right? She never had any other trouble from that, as far as I know. And I was in touch with her for a number of years after that. So, the bottom line, Alex, is that we're living in this time where our consciousness is opening up. The consciousness level of the world, I believe, is kind of like a balloon that's expanding every single day. It's getting a little bigger, a little bigger, a little bigger. And we're finally starting to realize what these bodies of ours really are and what they're capable of, and how they hold all the answers within them. And so if you know how to ask questions, you can get answers. And the body code really is like your guidebook to the subconscious mind to get those answers and fix those imbalances. And people are changing their lives with it all over the world.
Now, when you spoke about the circuits of the body code, can you dive in a little bit deeper into the circuits? Because that interests me in regards to the chakra energies and the energy centers and things like that, how that works with everything we're doing.
Yeah. Well, first of all, by circuits, what I mean in the book has to do with the connections between the organs and the glands and the muscles of the body. And so in practical reality, what I found when I was in practice was when I discovered the work that there was another doctor died many years ago who had kind of pioneered this understanding, but he was building on understanding that went back thousands of years to Chinese medicine, to 5-element theory, and so on. But basically, what happens is you can think of every organ and most of the glands in your body as having a circuit or kind of like a fuse, right? If you go into your bathroom and you plug in every blow dryer in your house and every curling iron and your welder, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to draw too much power. You'll blow the fuse. So you'll have to go out to the garage or to the basement or wherever in your house and open up that panel and find that fuse that's been blown and flip that breaker, right? To turn the power back on. Well, when your bathroom fuse blows, maybe in the next room, your stereo is playing and all of a sudden it shuts off too. Why would that happen? Well, it would only happen if if that room is on the same circuit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in our bodies, this is the easiest way to understand how this works in our bodies as well, because certain muscles are connected to certain organs and certain glands. And this is a fascinating understanding that made an enormous difference for me in practice, because I was focused on fixing my patients as much as I possibly could. I didn't want to band-aid them. I wanted to fix them. I really wanted to get to the underlying causes of their problems. And what I found was that sometimes people would have a misalignment that I couldn't correct. And I remember when I was in student clinic in chiropractic school years ago, for example, I had a patient that came into me every week, and he had a misalignment and discomfort and pain between his shoulder blades. And I would find misaligned bones there every week, and I would realign those bones, and he would feel so much better and so relieved. But then the week following, he'd be back again. The same bones would be out of alignment again. And I'd realign everything, and he'd feel so much better. And then the week followed, he'd come back. And this went on and on and on during the whole time that I was in clinic. And I could remember thinking, what is wrong here? Is it me? Am I a bad doctor? Is it this guy? What's going on? Why won't these bones stay put? Why won't the alignments that I'm making, why won't things stay aligned? Well, many, many years later, I found out that if you have an imbalance in your liver, maybe from feeling too much anger or resentment, or maybe from some other emotional energy, or maybe it's pesticide exposure, or maybe you've got mercury fillings, or who knows what it might be. It can be a lot of different things, but you can essentially short out that organ, the liver. And the liver happens to be connected to a muscle that travels from the inside edge of the right shoulder blade to the spine. It's called the rhomboideus muscle, or the rhomboid. That muscle will imbalance. And when you have one muscle imbalanced, there are always two. Now the other one is relatively stronger. And so things get pulled out of alignment, see? That was that guy's problem. It took me many, many years before I understood that. And so what we find, and what I found during the years that I was in practice, is that this was an incredibly powerful thing. For example, I found that if people had a problem with their right knee, it was usually because there was some imbalance going on in their gallbladder, because the gallbladder connects to a muscle right in the back of the right knee and also in the right shoulder. So sometimes shoulder trouble on the right side's gallbladder. I found that when people had an imbalance in the kidney, either one or the other, it would affect the low back. And in fact, in all those years with hundreds of patients with low back trouble and hundreds of herniated discs in the low back, I found that there were only two people in almost 20 years of practice that I had to send out for surgical intervention. The rest of them I was able to fix. Why? Because I knew the secret, and that Chinese acupuncturists, the people who are well versed in, for example, traditional Chinese medicine, they understand this, that there are connections between these organs and the glands and the muscles and so on. But it's a very powerful concept, and that's also in the body code. All the organs, all the glands are in there. It's all in the book, all these intricate connections. And it's a fascinating thing because now, for example, I quickly learned really back in practice that if a patient came in and they had left knee pain, it was usually almost always because they had an imbalance in their left adrenal gland. The adrenal glands sit on top of the kidneys, and of course they produce adrenaline, right? And so that's the stress gland of the body, cortisol too. If you're under too much stress for too long, you overload the adrenal glands, and that left side adrenal gland will usually become imbalanced first, because when you have paired organs in the body or paired glands, the left side organs or glands will be the mains and the right to the reserves, is how it works. So the left sides will usually go first. And that applies to the lungs and the kidneys, adrenals, and so on. And so, so I found that by correcting correcting the imbalance with the gland or the organ, that would turn the muscle back on, and it would correct things. To give you an idea, an example, a woman came into me one time, many years ago, and she said, she was overweight. She said, "Listen, Dr. Nelson," she said, my knees are killing me. She said, I went to the doctor and he said it's overuse. And she said, if I can't keep jazzercising, which I'm not even sure if that's a thing anymore, but it was then. She said, if I can't keep jazzercising, I'm not going to be able to lose weight. And if I can't lose weight, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my husband. And so I tested her and found an imbalance. It was her left adrenal gland was imbalanced. That was affecting the muscles of the left calf and a couple of other muscles that cross the knee joint on the left side. So I made a correction to that. And we teach that in the book as well. I was able to figure out what was going on, fix it. And I said, okay, try walking now. And the knee pain was gone. And then I said, okay, and she couldn't believe it. And then I said, okay, let's check the right knee. And the right knee was gallbladder, another imbalance. I was able to fix that and had her walk again. And the right knee pain was gone. And so that's what we mean really by circuits. But there are other kinds of systems in the body. For example, the meridians. And of course, the Chinese discovered the meridians. They're like little rivers of energy that flow just under the skin. They go all throughout the body. They've mapped these out, thousands of years ago. There have been figurines unearthed thousands of years old in China that have the same acupuncture meridian mapping that's used today. And so in the body code, you might find that there's a meridian imbalanced. And most commonly, what we find is that there is emotional baggage that's causing that imbalance. But there can be other things as well. But the whole point of the body code is that you can use it yourself to ask questions and get answers very rapidly about what's really going on with the body. Of course, there are chakras too, the 7 main chakras in the body. And we talk about those, and you can have imbalances in those as well. So, so the body code is a really it's a very complete way to look at the body. One thing I do need to mention is that the body code system, this is the body code book, right? Mm-hmm. There's also something that we call the body code system. And the body code system is actually an app that contains everything that we have found about the body. There was no possible way I could put everything into the book because it would have been about 4 times thicker. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to read a book this thick. So what we did is we put the most common things that we find in here, along with all the understandings of how to do this. And the idea with the book is that it's going to help people to understand how all of this works and actually help them to have success using the body code. If they decide they want to get the full version of the body code, then they can, whenever they want. It's a subscription application, an app that runs on every device you have. Mm. But a lot of people are going to have a lot of success just using it right from the book, like the emotion code.
So the body code, it seems that there's some elements. You were talking about Chinese medicine, but it also seems to have some Ayurvedic ideas as well in it. Ayurvedic medicine as well. Is that correct?
Well, for example, the chakras, there are basically what's in it is everything that I was able to find that actually worked over all those years that I was in practice. Hmm. And so there are, there's a part in the book where I talk about standing on the shoulders of giants. That was something that Isaac Newton said. He said, if I've been able to see further than other men, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants. And I quote him in the book. Because without all the work that has been done over all of these, hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years, right? Mm-hmm. The body code wouldn't exist. And so, so it's really kind of a compilation. It's everything that I learned that worked, everything that I could possibly find, everything that worked for me, and all the imbalances that I was able to find. And sometimes those imbalances that I was able to find were imbalances that came through prayer, because I was always asking for help from up above with everybody that I saw.
Let me ask you, what is the belief code? I've heard a little bit about that.
Well, the belief code is our next level of certification. So we offer certification for people who want to really master these healing methods. Level 1 certification in our company is emotion code certification. Mm-hmm. And that's where you begin. And that's easy because all you're looking for is emotional baggage. That's it. Level 2 certification is body code certification. Mm-hmm. You need to build on the foundation of emotion code certification to do body code certification, because there's a lot more going on with body code certification. Of course, you're looking for imbalances in all of these potential different areas, right? Everything from pathogens to misalignments to toxins and so on. Belief code certification will be our level 3 certification. We are working on that. We're hard at work on it right now, every day. And that will hopefully be coming out by the end of the second quarter, beginning of the third quarter of this year. Okay. And what that's about really is it's about finding, identifying, and releasing the subconsciously held beliefs that we all have. We end up creating belief systems that that really interfere with our lives and disrupt us from being able to create the life that we want. So, for example, you might have a belief system that you're a bad person. And so then there might be other beliefs that might eventually become attached to that. A negative belief system is kind of like a tree. The roots of the tree are what we call the faulty core beliefs. And then you have the trunk and branches, and then you've got leaves, and those are the limiting beliefs and the negative programs. And we've been doing this work for quite a while. It was pioneered actually by a couple of my students years ago that lived up in the Pacific Northwest, Gwen Legler and Leilani Alexander, a couple of really brilliant women who created a system that they called three-dimensional therapy, and it was really, all of us kind of felt, and them included, that eventually it needed to be part of this body of work that we're doing. And so eventually people will be able to access that. Whether that will ever be a book or not, I don't know. It might be a few years down the road. We don't have any plans for a book at this point. We're planning on having that be our level 3 certification program. But yeah, the subconscious mind knows about what beliefs you have. And so it's going to work just like the body code, kind of in a mind map pattern. And you'll be able to very quickly identify and zoom in and find those beliefs and then release those.
Yeah. And it's like they say, you spend the first 7 years of your life programming yourself and you spend the rest of your life trying to deprogram yourself.
There's a lot of truth in that.
Without question. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions, ask all my guests. What is your definition of living a good life?
Well, to me, living a good life has a lot to do with family. Because, when people have tragedies, they might lose their home, might lose all their worldly possessions. But if their family is still intact, then they'll tell you that what they're left with is the most important thing of all, because these material things come and go. So I think that I think it's about that. I think it's also about learning how to live happily. It's as a Christian, I believe in the scriptures and these ancient teachings, and one of those teachings is that that we're born into this world to learn how to have joy. And I've thought about that a lot. And I've thought, well, how's it possible for us to have joy in spite of all these bad things going on in the world and in our lives? And, we have catastrophes and tragedies and so on. And then I read another scripture that said we should receive all things with thankfulness. It doesn't say receive all the good things that happen to you. It's all the bad things too. And then I remember hearing Wayne Dyer speak once, and he quoted a guru who said that he said, "In my world, nothing ever goes wrong." Right. And I've thought a lot about that. And I think that if we can live our lives in such a way that no matter what happens to us, we can find gratitude, because no matter what it is, good or bad, we're going to learn from it. Right. And if we can find gratitude for that, imagine living your life in that way, where in your world, nothing ever goes wrong. Even though bad things happen, nothing ever goes wrong. That really struck me and stuck with me. And I think that gratitude is a very high vibration. Full on gratitude is way up there, very close to that emotion of joy. So I think the more we can strive for those, and the more we can strive to have unconditional love for our fellow beings, I think that's what's really important.
How do you define God?
How do I define God? Well, I believe that God is, he is the father of us all, that he's real. My religion teaches me, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and my religion teaches me that God is a glorified, a perfected human, that we literally are created in his image, and that he wants us to have the kind of life that he has. And so that's why this earth was created and all these other worlds. And I believe that there are countless inhabitants of innumerable, an infinite number of other worlds that are inhabited just like this one. And so, so I believe that God, and I know for a fact, actually, from the experiences that I've had, that God is our Father, that he is absolutely real, that he has nothing but pure and infinite love for every single one of us. And he's rooting for us all. And, but he doesn't interfere with our lives. If we want him to help us, we need to ask for that help. And when we do that, then that opens the door for him to be able to help us. And I learned when I was in practice, I had this habit before I'd work on somebody, I would actually just ask God to help me. And it was a totally private, totally personal habit, Alex. Nobody ever knew in all those years that I was actually taking just a moment to say a silent prayer for them. But there were times in response to that request for help when information would just flood into me like an avalanche of data and understanding. So that was unusual. It didn't happen very often, but it did happen. And so I learned from that higher power is totally aware of what we're doing all the time and is right there and willing to help us. And that's how I look at it.
And where can people find out more about you and the work that you're doing, sir?
Well, I have a personal blog at drbradleynelson.com. It's Dr. Bradley, BradleyNelson.com. And if you're interested in finding out more about my own spiritual beliefs, there's a page there. I think it's called My Beliefs. Our main website is at discoverhealing.com. Discoverhealing.com. You can go there and you can find all kinds of information about certification, the emotion code, the body code. You can find a practitioner there. We have a map of some of our practitioners that are all over the world. And so those two websites, drbradleynelson.com and discoverhealing.com.
And do you have any final words for the audience?
Well, I would just say that it's been an honor for me to be on your show and connecting to your audience and to you. And I guess I would just say that it's really time for us to wake up. Humanity as a whole is waking up to a lot of things. And some of those things are kind of uncomfortable, but it's okay because there is a whole new world that is coming and it's not far off. And I believe that this world is going to be elevated in a way that we can't really understand or comprehend. But there's a great new way of living that is coming. I mean, imagine a world where everybody is living from their heart, and where there is no more war. Imagine a world where nobody has to lock their doors. That's how it was when I was a kid. I'm that old. That's going to come again.
Dr. Bradley, I appreciate you coming on the show and for the work that you're doing in the world, my friend. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey and don't forget to subscribe.